Welcome back to the Lanterne Rouge Cycling Podcast presented by Zwift. Me here with Benji for La Flèche Wallonne men and women's editions. A pretty simple race. They sometimes change up the local circuit, but as you know, it finishes on the Murdewie, 1200 meters, 10.3%. It has like a 16% pinch in it. It's a nasty climb. And this year, or I can't remember if they had it last year, there was the Côte de Charav, 1400 meters, 8%, which was about 5Ks before the base of the Murdewie, the final one. And they do the Murdewie in the men's 3 times, in the women's it was done twice. We had Pogačar as the favourite in the betting markets in the men's race. Alaphilippe second. We've got Woods here. Valverde has to be considered. Dylan Turns. So a decent list, as well as Vlasov, who's looked pretty good punching this season. No Roglic as well, who came second last year. He and Alaphilippe set a record time, but not much happened, to be honest, in the early proceedings. I think Zwift is to... Without Zwift, I wouldn't have even watched probably the first or the last 40 kilometers. I would watch the last 10, but I was pedaling away, so I chucked it on anyway. But yeah, no one really threatening in the break at all, Benji.
No, not at all. And I was hoping that the race would offer an opportunity with those multiple Mudehuis and those multiple Côte de Giraves to have an attack by the likes of Remco Evenepoel, because they've got both Evenepoel and Alaphilippe at the start here, so they can play both cards and therefore have a punchy type in Alaphilippe and an early attacker into Remco. But it didn't seem like that was going to happen. We went to the second last Côte de Charav with about 36-ish kilometers to go. And it was not Remco that went, but a rider from EF, Simon Carr. We've seen him quite a few times in history on this channel already when it comes to Giro last year. Cortina d'Ampezzo, I think, the stage where he was pacing for Hugh Carthy up the starting point of the Passo Joao. Didn't last too long, but he was part of the group that went into that climb. Now, this time around, he went for a bit of a solo attack towards the leftovers of the breakaway, but that breakaway was not going to be playing a big role in the rest of the stage anymore, because by the time Simon Carr reaches them, he's having a conversation with them of, oh, I just caught up with you, I can't pull yet. And they are like, well, we've pulled the entire race. Obviously, we're not going to keep on going that much. And eventually, Carr leaves them behind and goes for a solo move. And we saw another move a bit later, right, by a DSM rider?
Søren Kragh Andersen went at some point. I don't know. It was like a longer version of Tratnik's move last year. I think there were moves from other riders, and Mari van Sevenot was marking. Geraint Thomas was pacing all day for Ineos. Pidcock had dropped. He and Jonas Vingegaard had dropped. Pidcock with loads left, and Vingegaard, I think, before they even started the last lap. So though they were out, it appeared to be all for Danny Martinez. For Ineos, they've had Carapaz, their leader, here before, and Kwiatkowski, who won Amstel, was also likely to be domestic. He was domestic last year. But we saw Alaphilippe, just chilling in the bunch, eating no wind. Woods was eating a fair bit with his 46-centimetre bars. There was Bahrain also riding. And I was like, is it for pulls? He's won Liège before. They had Haig and Caruso, I think it was, on the front, who just won the Giro de Sicilia. Before we get into the finale, mention our show partner, Zwift. In case you haven't heard, Zwift are counting down the days to the Tour de France Femme avec Zwift. Join the hashtag New Rules mission and ride 100 kilometers on Zwift between now and 15th of May, just under a month, to enter yourself into a grand prize of a VIP trip to watch the Tour de France Femme avec Zwift this year and ride on some of the most iconic rides in France. For more info and terms and conditions, as well as your free 7-day trial, head to Zwift.com through the link in the description down below. Mary's with SKA. SKA is asking him to pull. Maori refuses until they're about to be caught. They enter the Murdewie. They're caught pretty much at the base, and it's Movistar lining it out, pacing for Valverde. Obviously, he entered Murdewie in terrible position last year, not to be repeated this year, and he actually hopped up on a curb and scooted ahead of Pidcock last year. Mas then takes over and pulls really hard, and we see Alaphilippe quite deep. There's the left-right-hand bend where I think Roglic moved forward and then he attacked out of it with 400 to go last year. Ridiculous performance. And Alaphilippe sort of waited on Valverde. They were all deep. And it was Turns, Valverde, and Vlasov at the front. Pogačar trying to move up and not looking too good. Eventually, Dylan Teuns just went to the front with 150 meters to go. Valverde in the wheel. Vlasov losing that wheel. Pogacar fourth with Alaphilippe behind him. Alaphilippe had seemed to set his whole Murder-Wii up, believing the hype, following Pogacar. Pogacar then loses Vlasov's wheel, 200 meters to go. Alaphilippe can't close that gap. Vlasov is gapped, and it's Bala against Teuns, with Bala, as it levels off, trying to come out of the wheel of Teuns and just can't. Sits back down with Dylan Teuns winning La Flèche Wallonne. Somewhat surprising fashion. Bahrain keep winning La Flèche Wallonne. But he came 8th at Brabant's, 10th at Amstel, 6th at Flanders. They should have ridden from the Valenciana. He came 3rd in Flèche in 2017 behind Valverde and Dan Martin. But yeah, I didn't expect it, Benji, because he's usually good in cold and wet conditions.
Well, I'd argue that, based on the things we've seen in the last couple of weeks, we should have expected it. I kind of feel bad about myself that I didn't expect it, because he was in the strongest group when it comes to Brabantse Pijl. He punctured out of that group in the final. He's been strong the entire classic season so far in the last part of the races, and I'd argue that we have his history as well when it comes to Flèche Wallonne, where he had a good result on this finish before, I think podium. So combining all that, we should have at least given him like an outsider chance of winning this race. And especially knowing that we had question marks with every favorite at the start of this race. For example, with Alaphilippe, he had that crash in Brabantse Pijl, but then again, he's also not that great in rainy conditions when it comes to Brabantse Pijl. So that was like a question mark for him. Was his form good enough or not? And Pogacar, he's never showed anything like a Murder-Hui finish in his career that could say, oh, we're going to beat all the biggest punchers on a parkour like this. Obviously, he's proven a lot of things in his career that he hadn't done before, but I still didn't have him as my personal favorite for this parkour. I was looking and hoping that Alaphilippe would have a better day than the rainy one he had at Brabant, but that wasn't to happen. But I also want to point out, I actually don't necessarily think that Alaphilippe thought, oh, I'm going to keep Pogacar's wheel the entire way up Murder-Hui, because when looking at where they start, Pogacar actually starts Murder-Hui behind Alaphilippe and starts moving up together with Guillaume Martin past Alaphilippe with about, 500, 600 meters to go. And that's when Alaphilippe starts kicking back and gets past, it's probably Lafay, not even Guillaume Martin, I'm not actually sure. It's a Cofidis rider, okay? And Alaphilippe then gets past an Ineos rider as well, and then gets to the wheel of Pogacar, but it's not like he was stuck to his wheel. It was like, there's a half a meter there, there's a half a meter there. So I dare to say that his positioning was partially due to the fact that he just didn't have the legs to be at the front in the first place. Do you think I'm wrong with that?
Yeah, I think you're right. I think, he probably wasn't hyper-focusing on Pogacar. The time for the Murder-Wii was, I think, 10 seconds slower than last year, a full 10 seconds. And this is why I tweeted the other day, and I got a lot of feedback on this, that Pogacar is the most overrated rider in the peloton. And that doesn't mean, that's not the same as saying he's a bad rider. They're not the same thing. He should probably be the favourite for the Tour de France as long as he's fine and healthy or whatever. But he was favourite for this race, ahead of Alaphilippe, ahead of Teuns, ahead of Woods. And his best result was 9th on a much slower time than last year. And I was like, I'm just saying, the reason I said that and tweeted it is just because it wasn't a bit. It's because people sometimes lose their mind and just forget basic maths, that he's not good at every single thing. And today we saw that. He wasn't in 20 degrees, warm conditions on this punchy circuit. Like, he was 20 seconds slower than Roglic time last year. 20 seconds on a 1,400, 1,500 meter climb, maybe less. But here's the actual full top 10. Teuns winning ahead of Bala. Very important points for Movistar. Valverde taking 320. Vlasov third. Alaphilippe fourth. Dani Martinez fifth. Woods on 7 seconds, I was pretty surprised about. I thought he'd do better. He's sixth. Guerrero, again, EF need those points. Seventh, Mollard, Barguil, Viermoj rounding out the top 10 with Pogacar 12th on actually more than 7 seconds. Other surprises were Lafay, however you say it, I thought would do better. But I guess this is different to punching against Odd Christian Eiking. In an Arctic race stage, he lost 24 seconds to Teuns, and he was more than 24 on the road. He came 32nd, and I don't really think he was doing any domestique duties for Pogacar. So that is that is a world apart from his
Yeah.
2020 Flèche Wallonne winning performance. I mean, so I don't know. I mean, he had a hip injury. I don't know. That's bad, to be honest.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I'd argue that there's a few riders that I expected more of. Like, for example, I said it at the start, I expected something from Evenepoel on this parcours, but it looked like he was at the front during the stage to control dangerous moves. And when it comes to Murderui, he was ahead of Alaphilippe, very much near the front when they went into Murderui, and then started looking back to figure out where Alaphilippe was and just was kind of dropping back because it was like, my work is done. And then he saw that Alaphilippe was pretty far and just kept on dropping further. So I've got no clue what I was expecting. I was expecting an early move, I guess, from Quickstep to try and kind of do a long-term reverse lead out between multiple climbs with Remco Evenepoel, if that makes sense. But it's the first time in 7 years where the favorite does not win this race, La Flèche Wallonne. I swear every time Alaphilippe, when he was the favorite or co-favorite, he was not favored last year?
I don't think so. No, that's why I was scared, because his form seemed to be the same as last year, and I underrated him so much last year for the big races, and then he cleaned Flèche. I think he was second favourite last year behind Roglic. Roglic obviously not here. Okay. He's nursing a knee injury. But I want to do another. You know what else I said in that tweet, Benji? I said Teuns is the most underrated. He is underrated, Dylan Teuns. Like, I mean, he's a rider he's not a GC contender. The TT isn't there. What would you, I don't know, what do you see for him for the rest of the year? Is it stage hunting in the Tour just like last year? Does he go to the Giro? I think stage hunting in the Tour. I think he's someone who could actually top 10 GC at the Giro d'Italia. But yeah, I reckon he might win another Tour stage. Mendy from the break.
Yeah, certainly a possibility. It depends on what his role in the team is going to be, which riders they have when it comes to GC, and whether he's going to have to work for Jack Haig's podium or not, because you declared today that Jack Haig will podium in the Tour de France, and I will firmly, I don't know if I'll support that statement yet. I'll see it on the upcoming races. But when it comes to Teuns, next to that, like Hill Classics, LBL's coming up, he's looking one of the stronger riders in the last 2 weeks, and with this victory, is proving that once again that he's up there. Do you expect that Murderui is different than LBL, you know? Do you expect that Teuns might be up there on Rochefoucauld at the end of LBL?
It's a bit longer. It suits Pogačar a bit more. It suits who's the favourite Wout, who's doing it. Suits him a lot more than Murderui. Bahrain is just really strong. Caruso, Poles, Haig is coming into it, and now Dylan Teuns. They're missing Colbrelli, who in his 2021 form would have been unreal at where's Tratnik? I just realised, Benji, was Tratnik here today for Bahrain?
I don't think so.
Again, another man for top 10 to help out at Liège-Bastogne-Liège. There may be Ineos and them the strongest team, but yeah, that was men's Flèche Wallonne. Honestly, not the most exciting race you'll ever see. Just watch the last kilometre. Anything else from men's?
Did we insult Cofidis by not mentioning their raid on Côte de Charav at the end, or is that not worth mentioning?
I'm out on meme attacks because that's what they want. They want it mentioned when they attack for no reason. Rochas being launched on Charav and then everyone died, and Simon Cars is a bit like that too. But yeah, Cofidis tried something, but maybe they should have helped Lefebvre with positioning a bit more. Yeah, that was men's Flèche. Good to see a different winner, a surprise result. Otherwise, in cycling, had the Tour of the Alps this week. Bouchard won the first stage, Bilbao second. Second stage, Bilbao won in a sprint. It's like all descent finishes. They do like 30, 40-minute climbs and descent finishes. Again, Bardet just behind him second, and Kamna won. Again, his strike rate and breakaways from a break today for stage 3. In terms of GC, it's Bilbao leading by 6 bonus seconds ahead of Bardet. Volta, Benji's man, third, who'll obviously be, focusing on the Giro d'Italia as a Hungarian with the Hungarian Grande Partenza. But we have, it's a weird parcours, 2 stages to come. We have the first uphill finish tomorrow, but it's a stepped climb. And then the 5th stage is not uphill finish either. So probably some GC action tomorrow. Sivakov looks like the man for Ineos. And we've got Chavez and Carthy as cards to
Pronsky.
play. Oh yeah, Vadim Pronsky. Better climber than Vlasov, facts, over 30 minutes. He actually
Vlasov
is.
just came third on Mudhui, but of course it's not a 30-minute climb.
Yeah. Vadim Fronsky over 30 minutes in the Giro in cold conditions when people aren't watching is better than Vlasov on those climbs. Obviously, Vlasov, better all-round rider. But otherwise, in U23 racing, there's Romain Gregoire, who
Oh,
is just winning everything. I don't think these races are televised, but he won
no.
in the last 3 days, Liège U23, Giro del Belvedere, and another race I don't know the name of. I don't know if
Palo
he.
del Resiotto.
Okay. He beat Perstrand Hagenes. This is U23, not juniors, right, Benji?
Yeah, correct. And he's a first year's U23 rider, just came out of the junior rankings. He was riding for Age Desert juniors team, if my mind serves me right, and then transferred to the opposite place. Like it's like a derby between those two teams.
Yeah,
And he
Inter and
transfers
AC.
to Groupama U23 instead, the team that's winning literally everything in the U23 scene because they're godlike, that U23 team. Like Jumbo's U23 development team is good, but when we look at the standard in U23 teams, it's Groupama. Like it's insane. And their New Zealand riders like Lawrence Piffy, for example. They've got Lenny Martinez, who is riding great as a 18-year-old in the actual Groupama team at the moment for the first time in Tour of the Alps. And like, it's such a strong team. I can't get over it. But Romain Gregoire he's the real one, and people are pointing at Ayuso comparisons already because Ayuso was dominating similarly in the first two of his Italian U23 races last year. The third one that Gregoire won, he had a bit of luck in the sense that his opponent had bad luck, where I think Edgar Pinzon, who was literally in the attack and had a bit of a gap because he was in the earlier breakaway, he crashed in the final descent, and eventually that led to Gregoire taking over that spot. Would he have caught him still if he didn't crash? I don't know, because the footage is terrible of U23 races. I'm following the team social medias of Team Kolpak, Italian Conti team, U23 team. So it's a misery to follow, but it's really enjoyable to see which riders we can see at the top. And these are the ones we're going to see fighting in the Tour de l'Avenir this year and so forth. So can't wait for that.
Lenny Martinez, I don't see unless he grows a little bit. He's very small. I think he looks
Height
like.
shaming is real.
Well, you can't do. I mean, maybe for other things, but GC, if you're 52 kilos, you're too small. You just get blown apart on the rollers and lose so much energy before the climb. Yeah, so he'll need to grow a little bit or put on some weight, but still probably be a useful rider in the high mountains. But Gregoire looks like the one. He looks so good. That's all from us. We'll have the Liège preview dropping tomorrow. I'm not sure if we might have a Tour of the Alps roundup either on Saturday or as part of the Liège recaps on Sunday. So don't hold us to that. We've taken it a bit easy this week. And thanks to Zwift as always for supporting the show. And we'll see you later. Tomorrow, that is.